There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
Thanks for joining me on the Leadership Crucible. Today, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to have Lee Cockerell on the program. Lee's career includes 8 years with Hilton Hotels, 17 years with Marriott Corporation, and 16 years with the Walt Disney Company. Lee joined Disney in 1990 as a Director of Food and Beverage, Quality Assurance, and Vice President of the Hotel Division for Disney in Paris. In 1993, Lee became the Senior Vice President of the Hotel Division at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida, and in 1997 was promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations for all of Walt Disney World operations, serving in that position for 10 years before retiring to start his own business, Lee Cockerell LLC, a training and development company. Lee has authored 6 books on leadership, management, and world-class customer service, and hosts the Cockerell Academy, which focuses on training leaders and managers for the next generation. Lee, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here today, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about your history today and see if we can pull some nuggets of information from you that you can share with other people. But, you know, I know you've had a long and an extraordinarily successful career. We've talked many times. I'm part of your leadership group, the Cockerell Academy, which I really, really enjoy. And I'm sorry I missed today's event, but I had a conflict. But, you know, I know you didn't start from a privileged background. You grew up in Oklahoma, and why don't we start there? You know, tell us a little bit about, you know, you and how you grew up, and you know how, and then we'll kind of progress on your career.
Yeah, well, growing up, I thought it was fun. I grew up on a farm. We were poor as could be. I found out later when I grew up, and my mother told me how bad it was. But yeah, we didn't even have indoor plumbing. But you know, when you're a kid, that doesn't bother you. We got dinner every night, and but my mother was kind of busy. She was married 5 times. Yeah, and I've been adopted twice. I got my name Cockerell when I was 16. My husband, number 4, and he had money, so I got to go to college, which I did. But I forgot to go to class, so I promptly flunked out and then joined the Army. So that's kind of my life. I lived in Oklahoma my whole life. I was never outside the state till I was 20 years old. I knew pretty much only that I knew is what we didn't watch the news. I didn't read the paper. I had no idea what was going on anywhere in the world. So the Army was a good move because I learned. You know, yeah, it was great.
So when you joined the Army, what did you do there? I mean, what was your MOS when you were in the Army?
I was a cook, and that turned out to be one of the best jobs. I was, actually. There were 300 people in the class, and I came in number 2.
Well, that's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I was doing baking and all of that kind of stuff, and you know, for when you're 20 years old, it was fun, and so yeah, it was great.
Very good. Well, you know, I know you've faced a lot of different situations in your life, and has there been any that you look back on today that have really helped to shape who you became, not only as a person but as a leader?
Well, I think it's cumulative. You know, I've had all kinds of issues. I got married to Priscilla, which was a good thing. We've been married 54 years. We struggled in the beginning. I got fired from a job that she told me not to take. So I was unemployed for 3 months while I looked for a job, and that got me to Marriott. And I would say being unemployed with a 2-year-old and a Volkswagen, the sheriff confiscated our furniture because we broke the lease on the apartment. and I needed $2,000 to get our furniture back. So I eventually, after 3 months, got a job, and I think I learned a lot about listening. Too. I was pretty impulsive, and I took the job because they paid me more. But you don't make more unless you keep the job. So I uh, but it was lucky. I got to Marriott, which turned out to be a great career. So sometimes we think things are terrible, but this one turned out to be just perfect.
Yeah, now your time at Marriott was pretty interesting because I mean you started at a very entry level job, but you ended up being the VP of food and beverage for the entire corporation. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I was a restaurant manager there when I started, and I'd worked in food a lot. At Hilton, I was in the food business, and then at Marriott, that's why they hired me. And I kept getting experience, and I opened the Chicago Marriott on Michigan Avenue. I just had all these different jobs in the food business, and one day I guess they thought I knew more than I thought I did. So they made me. I was the vice president of food and beverage planning for the whole company worldwide. And so I tell people today, if you become an expert in something, it'll always be something you can do. Even when I left and went to Disney, they wanted me for my food background. I couldn't get out of food once, So yeah, it served me well, and Marriott was great. What an incredible company! I joined when they had 32 hotels, and now they've got 8,000. So Bill Marriott grew that company in 60 years. But they were great. I learned a lot about leadership. He was a really good to people. They trained you. They helped you get to be a better leader, better manager. My wife and Priscilla and I moved 11 times in our early career. And although her dad was an admiral in the Navy, and she moved 12 times with him. So she's moved 23 times, and we've been in Orlando 30 years. So those early days were pretty wild. And I tell people, we went for the opportunities. That those opportunities are really the best training. And a lot of people don't like to move, but I tell you, experience is a big deal, and it really gets you ready for bigger things.
Yeah, I think what I found was that every community has its own culture and nuance to it, but also every organization does, as you know. And so it's part of that leadership learning curve. Every time you go in, you're exposed to just different thought processes.
Oh, absolutely. The difference between the Army and Hilton and Marriott and Disney are pretty big. Yeah, and it does take time to learn and pay attention. And I learned to not go in thinking I knew everything because I learned quickly I didn't know much. I didn't know what they were talking about at Disney for years, some of those terms they use. But yeah, it's different, but it's great. It builds your self-confidence to get those different experiences.
So when you were deciding to leave Marriott, what was the one or two factors that said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make this step?
So I was not too happy at Marriott by that time. I got passed over for a big promotion at corporate, and of course, I didn't think it was my fault, but it probably was. I was pretty too aggressive, probably, in how I handled things. So I was had a good job and I was doing great, but I'd been doing it. It was not driving me. I wasn't getting so excited every morning to go do it because it became routine. So this came along, and I have a wife who would love to live in Paris. So if she, and that's half the battle. Priscilla never said a word anytime we moved. She was ready to go. Let's go, and we went. And so I think you got to have that kind of partner because if she'd have said, no, I'm not going to Paris, I guess we would not have gone. And I mean, it was such a great experience. I tell anybody, if you can work in an international country, it changes who you are dramatically. People worry too much about taking risks because usually if you're good at what you do, you'll find something. I said there's life after Disney, there's life after Marriott, there's life after Hilton. And so, yeah, just go do it so you don't have regrets.
So after you were in Paris for a few years, then you went back to Disney World, correct?
Yeah, I got a call after 3 years, about a year after the opening over there, and they wanted me to come to Disney World to be in charge of the hotel division. And I came and did some interviews. Priscilla's father had died about that time, and our son was getting married, and so everything had come together. So I went for the interview. They offered me the job, and it was kind of time to move back to the U.S. Priscilla's mother was getting older; she needed us to be around, and we thought we would never live in Florida. I don't know why we thought that, but Priscilla had never been to Florida. And so, yeah, the job came up. It was a great job. I was in charge of all the hotels, and I got a nice pay increase and stock options and a car, and I got to work for Mickey Mouse. That's pretty cool because when you tell people you work for Disney, everybody wants to talk about that because. And it was the same with Marriott. I mean, those great brands, but Disney's really a special brand. Everybody's been to Disney, and yeah, it was great. It was just a good move for me at the time.
Yeah. So you were in charge at Disney World of pretty much everything operationally. Is that correct?
I was. I ran the hotel division for 2 years, and then I was promoted to executive vice president for all operations at Walt Disney World. So I had everything, the parks and hotels and ESPN and all that stuff. Yeah.
So, how many people were you responsible for?
There's a lot more now, but there were 40,000 then, and about 5,000 managers. So yeah, it was a big group, more than I'd ever been in charge of.
No, I know in our past discussions, and I've read all of your books, which are just really they're just really insightful and really great reads, and have helped me. I know to be a better manager and a better leader. But you've talked about how you align what you need your manager and leaders to do that report to you, and talk a little bit about how you did that, because I think that's very unique, and I think also that's a takeaway. I think that others, no matter if you're running 5 people or 5,000, I think the strategy that you used was very, very good.
Yeah, well, I think one of the problems is how do you bring everybody onto the same page in a big organization? I mean, you got thousands of people out there. You want everybody thinking in a certain way. And so I worked on a document called Disney Great Leader Strategies for about a year. I hired a consultant, and she came over and interviewed me, and we talked about the things I did right, the things I did wrong, the things I wished our managers would do better. And we ended up with this document called Disney Great Leader Strategies, and it became the basis for my first book, Creating Magic. And we rolled that out to everybody over about 3 or 4 months and seminar and talked to them and went over it and started to clarify expectations for behavior, for courtesy, for cleanliness. So everybody was in the same place. And it turned out to work great. It's like I like systems, processes, and I like the roadmap or the recipe book. So I was a baker. If you don't put the yeast in, you don't have a good product. So I think about that a lot. Do we have the system, and does everybody understand it? And obviously, in the fire service, that's probably critical. That there's a way to do things, and there's a way you don't do things, and as I said at Disney, we decided this is the Disney way, and that's the way we do it. And I think any organization should be doing that. A lot of people. I was with a group this morning. We were talking about interviewing, and they said, "Well, how do you do that better?" I said, "Well, develop the 7 questions you want to ask everybody because that's what you want to know, and use those same 7 questions every time you interview somebody." You can ask them others, but get those deep ones down to understand how they handle obstacles, where they're coming from, how they think about dealing with difficult situations. And most people just go out there and blah, blah, blah for half an hour, and then they hire somebody. And you got to have a systematic approach to understanding what you're doing, I think. And so that's what I put in everywhere I've worked before: checklists, procedures, policies, operating guidelines, rules, and then train everybody and then enforce it. And you can imagine in your business too. I mean, enforcement's important or people die, if they don't follow the procedure or the right way to do things, or they don't have checklists to make sure they've got everything they need when they, you can't be at a fire and be looking for something that's back at the fire station. And so checklists are a big deal to me. And I think I would help a lot of companies think about it. Hospitals have improved infection rates dramatically by just putting checklists in about wash your hands and use sanitizer. That one thing has cut infections by 50%. Just an expectation. This is the way you have to do it. You don't have a choice.
No, yeah, totally agree. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's some crossover between what Disney does and what happens in the fire service every day. I mean, it's a very planned, orchestrated event, and you've got every time I've been on any fire scene, it's like the football. It's like the football team. Everybody's got a part to play, and they play it. And that's the same way with the cast members at Disney. I mean, they all have a job to do and a role. One of the things that I found, and I've always been a big admirer of Walt Disney and what he was able to build, but just the alignment that you see throughout the park, and just the interaction that you have with the different cast members and their attention to detail and attention to service. And I saw that, very closely when I worked in Anaheim with the people throughout Disneyland and California Adventure. I mean, their attention to doing things systematically and making sure that the customer's expectations were met. That's a 24/7 process for them. So it's it's very inspiring if you watch what they do each and every day.
Well, somebody said, figure out the best way to do everything and then do it that way. Do it the best. I think Southwest Airlines said many years ago, there's a best way to land a plane. Let's do it that way. And I think that's, and as a leader, and you and me and anybody else, when you learn a different way, a better way, then you implement that. But you wait till everybody agrees that this is the better way, then you put it in place. We said we like cast members' ideas, but we don't want them to implement them until we've reviewed them and make sure that that belongs to the organization. So, yeah.
And then you systematically roll that out so that everybody's doing it the same way. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of checklist, you happen to be you had a pretty momentous event at Disney World on 9/11, and can you kind of share that experience and how did you guys handle that? Because that was a very unique day for not only the country for sure, but for many major corporations, but Disney had a kind of unique challenge there. So can you share that story with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we handled it perfectly, and I'll tell you why. Is because we practice for crisis drills 2 or 3 times a year, and we don't know when they're going to happen. We had a company that put us through them. I get a call at 3:00 in the morning. We have to open the command center within 30 minutes. There's a seat for all the right people in that command center that need to be there, including local law enforcement, the sheriff, and we have tested procedures. We have 22 command centers on the property. They all open at the different properties, and we go through the drill. And we'd been through drills so many times that we just did the right thing. We had everybody evacuated out of all the parks in about 90 minutes back to their hotels. We suspended room charges, telephone call charges. We took care of people. We sent characters to the hotels to entertain the children because the parents were really upset. There were a lot of guests here from New Jersey and New York, and it's the same. I said we don't get ready for hurricanes. We stay ready. We don't get ready for it. We stay ready, and everybody knows what to do. We know exactly what everybody knows their role, and the cast members we put it in. We put in a manual system. We're always ready for that. So as everybody was leaving, they got a ticket to come back. Uh, it's a procedure. If some, and I always tell, get ready. Something's going to happen in your business. Something. It's like at home. Buy the fire extinguisher before you have the fire. Exercise before you have a heart attack. Put a pool fence around your pool before somebody drowns. Teach your kids to swim when they're as 6 months, 8 months, 9 months old. And I think this is what people have got to do. Anticipate what could happen and then prepare for it. And then even if it's not exactly that, you'll know the procedures are pretty much the same. And we just went through the drill and had it closed and reopened. And then we lost 35% of our business that day. Everybody canceled for the future. And we spent the next 60 days figuring out how to get our costs under control. There was no panic. Everybody knew what we do in a crisis, whether it's, we would practice for a shooting in the parks. We would practice for just a chemical release. Many, many things. And so everybody, and the command centers, we always let the command center at the source of where the problem is make the decisions. Doesn't have to come back to central. If you had a shooting in a park, the Magic Kingdom, the people at the Magic Kingdom will manage that. So they can do it quicker. They're on the scene. They know what's going on, and we've practiced so many times. So practice literally does make perfect. Practice, practice, practice. Yeah, and it was great to watch it. It was a terrible day, but it was great to watch everybody just do what they had to do.
Yeah, sure was. And I've seen Disney on. We ran a lot of half marathons when I was at Disneyland, and one of the things that always impressed me is when a guest has a medical emergency, whether it's because they're running in a half marathon or at the park, how well the Disney folks react to manage that situation for the family involved, and it's really above and beyond. And I think it's a good example of what you're talking about from a business perspective. Any organizational perspective is that when you plan for those things and you have that process in place, then you just react appropriately. And so many businesses they don't think about the continuity of their operation if something were to happen that would close them down for 10 days.
Well, I think the process of anticipating what can happen is really an interesting way to think about things. When our granddaughter got a car when she was 16, we put in there cables, tire inflator, we put water in the car, blankets. She lives in Colorado, so all the stuff's there in case she has an emergency. And how many people, their car breaks down, they don't have a charge, they don't have all the stuff, and you got to anticipate, what will I need if this doesn't go well?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And part of I think the emerging strategy, especially over the last, 20 years, has been to be really focused on risk reduction and really investing. And I think we're seeing a move in the fire and emergency services to invest as much on that side as on the response side and prevent it from happening in the first place. And I think that shift will continue into the future, which I'm very happy to see, because it's much easier to correct the problem when before it happens than after it does happen. And it's a lot safer for our personnel when we do it that way. So,
and a lot of the problem is in your business. A lot of your problems are, somebody owns the building, they don't inspect it. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They got a checklist, but they don't follow it. Next thing you know, you've got doors locked, stuff stored in the wrong place, electrical panels that are not wired properly. It's the same story. We know what to do. Getting people educated and then enforcing it is usually the problem.
Well, and it's a day-to-day operation, isn't it? I mean, you saw that at Disney. I mean, you have to have people that are focused just on the safety element in any business and looking at that every day, because it's very easy to to do something that ultimately is a dangerous practice. And then once you see it 2 or 3 days in a row, then it just becomes part of the landscape, and you don't pay attention to it anymore. But it's the risk factor still there.
Absolutely. You got to be like a mother, just checking everything every day.
Exactly right.
Like a mother, don't trust anybody.
So, since when did you leave Disney? When did you retire from Disney?
I retired when I was 62 in '06. And yeah, but Disney was great, but I didn't, I worked for 42 years, that was enough. And I wanted to do some other things and like what I'm doing. And when you work at Disney, you don't have time to do much else. That's,
Well, that's
and
true. So tell us about that something else, because I know you've written several books, and you've launched the Cockerell Academy.
yeah. Well, I wrote the first book, and I got agreement with Disney. They wanted a book about leadership, and they let me put Disney on the cover of it. They never let anybody do that before, so I felt I was waiting for the lawyers to call and say no, but they didn't. And it's really done well. It's in 22 languages now. It's kind of the strategies that we use at Disney for leadership, from hiring to training to uh, talking about ethics and honesty and systems and procedures, and it's done great. And then I did the second one around customer service called the Customer Rules. And then I've always been a big fan of time management. I practice it myself, and I wrote a book on time management, how to be more organized. And then one on career management, how to keep your career under control when you run into these obstacles that you will, whether it's a wrong job, wrong boss, wrong whatever. And that's being republished again this August 23rd. And I uh, I just think that all of us, if we know something, we ought to try to teach it to people. All that experience and all those years and all that exposure, that to pass that along. And with my Cockerell Academy and mainly my podcast, we just did the 400th episode, and people write me every day and tell me they are learning things they didn't know. Well, of course, because uh, I'm old. I know more than they do. So, and one day I say wisdom takes time. Information you can get every day, but wisdom takes time.
Experience can be the best teacher, but we have to share it for it to be a learning experience. And I think you're exactly right. I think that in many of the young leaders and managers and young people that I talk to, I think there's a real yearning for that, because they're simply not getting that in school, and even at the the university level, they're just not getting a lot of that. So I think passing along some of the experiences and some of the things that have created scar tissue for us is pretty important. So
I would say that the fire service and Disney both have the credibility to do this, passing on good leadership and management and culture, uh, customer service issues, because the fire service is highly regarded and respected. When people respect you for what you do, they take your advice. And I think Disney too. So, I mean, if we have that kind of influence, we ought to use it, because people will listen to the fire service, they will listen to Disney and others. But everybody doesn't have that credibility. And if you got it, we ought to use it.
totally agree. Can you share a little bit about with our audience about the Cockerell Academy? Because I find that to be extremely useful. So just kind of tell us a little bit about how you came upon that, and what it's about, and how they can get involved.
Well, I always wanted to create this academy, if you will, of courses. People could pay for it. They could go online, take the courses, and I always put it off. Didn't want to do it, but the pandemic came along. So my buddy Jody Mayberry and we had nothing better to do for 2 years. So we got to work, and we started recording it and laying it out and getting some graphic artists and some uh, and we did it. We have 9 courses on there now. There's a steady stream of information that comes through. It's $400 a year, and it's um, people will learn a lot. And I think they're well done. They're simple. There's a time management course on there. There's a leadership course on there. There's a course on how to create better relationships with people. We have one course on there, the 30 things young people should know before they enter the workforce. I mean, it's really some good stuff. There's a lot of little short 5-minute videos talking about a subject.
One of the things about the Cockerell Academy that I enjoy is you have a monthly phone call with just people from all over the country and all over the world.
Yeah, today we had one, and it was great. The people that are they're in the pharmaceutical business or in every kind of business you can imagine, but everybody's got the same problems: hiring and leading people and training people and keeping people. So we have some robust conversations about subjects around how to lead and train people better. And I think I tell people we sometimes think too much technical about our jobs instead of about the people. And you kind of got 2 parts of a job. You got your technical part, put out the fire, but you also got to get the people wanting to put out the fire and wanting to be committed and and I say every day you better think about what you do and how you do it, because the people part is the part that's always the problem. And your whole life, your biggest problem will be people. The fires will be, you can put the fires out, but the people are really difficult sometimes.
Yeah, that's really true, and it's really all built upon the culture of your organization. And I know that's one of the things that I know we've talked about in the past. Is one of the things that I probably didn't focus on enough, is building that culture in the organizations that I led. I was probably more focused on the technical side and the strategic side, but it really all starts with the investment that you make in the culture of your organizations.
Well, it is. I can imagine in the fire service, the people you hire and their values, that's the person that goes in and does the heroic stuff because that's who they are. And you don't train that, you hire it, and you set a culture up where they are proud and feel, that they have to do it, not they personally. And I think that's when you build that kind of pride, I mean, that's what you have. The people who go the extra mile on those fires, the one that goes back in and pulls somebody out. I mean, that's because you hired the right people that have passion and have the right attitude, and they know it's the right thing to do. And the more of those people you have, more lives get saved.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, what takeaways would you like to leave today that may help someone become a better leader or better person in the future?
Yeah, I think people are so busy they're not focused on getting better. We're so busy going to work and getting it done, and the boss wants something. You've got to get home, and there's a soccer game and all that. You better put some time in to read more, understand what are you trying to achieve. And tell everybody, don't underestimate the influence you have. People are watching you. You're leading them. Everything you say and do matters. Being a good role model. Be careful what you say and do. Your attitude matters. Don't underestimate what you can achieve. I think too many of us do. We could do more. And but the one thing I worry about the most is I'm not sure people are keeping up with their just frankly learning. I don't like to read a lot, but I read every night for 20, 25 minutes. Maybe my wife can read for 3 hours, but at least you're learning. And when I wake up in the morning, I learn something again. And all that comes together so you make better decisions. The more you know, the more you can do, and the more you can think better. And that's what I think people got to do. Don't get in a rut where you're just going through life and you're not getting better. It's never too late. I don't care how old you are. I don't care. It's never too late to improve your health, your relationships, your effectiveness. It's an attitude, and we need to remember that time is not on your side. You got to get with it. and people are depending on you, especially in your business. Most of our guests are happy. I'm not so sure when your house burns down, you're happy. So, I mean, you got a much more responsibility than we do by far. And for people to understand that. And that's what the depth of that responsibility is really important.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. I know after I retired, from being a fire chief, I had a little bit more time on my hands, and I found that I had much better balance in my life. But I also found that I was doing exactly what you said. I was actually learning much more than I was when I was on the job. And I think you have to carve out that time in your daily schedule to allow yourself, because every job it keeps you really, really busy. But carve out that time to allow yourself to have that 20 or 30 minutes to learn something new each and every day. And I think if you can do that, ultimately it's going to make you a better person and a better leader in the future.
It's kind of like exercise. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, Lee, thanks so much for being with me today, and it's always good to spend time with you. And the next time we're in Florida, we'll meet up at our Coffee for the Soul coffee shop. Yeah,
I'll be there. You can bet on it.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. That was great.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.